My senior watched me read a research paper and told me whatever you're doing is completely wrong because I gave 3 weeks. Yes, 3 weeks in the starting of my course to understand one single paper. And my senior was in the same presentation group as me reading the same paper, and she asked me a few questions about my part that I had to present. And I was like, okay, I you know what, I think I need to give one more read to answer your questions. I'm in first year, I don't really know the terminology you used. And she was like, you read the paper wrong, completely wrong. And I was like, okay. It changed everything for me, okay? I thought I had it, I underlined it, I highlighted the words, printed it out, and yeah, I drew diagrams, like again in my notebook, and I was convinced that I understood it. She asked me one question, and I was uh, obviously I didn't. So yeah, today I'm going to share the system that I I discovered, I should say, through my experiences by reading almost hundreds of papers now that I've completed my masters. And yeah, it will save you a lot of time. It took me to figure it out because nobody teaches you this, not in high school, not in university, not even in some of the PhD programs, because they just expect you to understand it on your own, just figure it out on your own. So yeah, let's fix this now, because when I was struggling very quietly, and I thought that everyone else had it sorted, but no, it, it is not like that. I promise it's not like that. So yeah, let's fix that today. So today, in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 parts, and at the end of which you will be capable enough to make your own system, because there's no one single generalized system that works for everyone, because everyone has a different learning pattern, a different visual skill to understand research language, and just different interest in things, and yeah, everything. So the 5 questions which I'm going to cover today is why most people read research papers wrong and why it's not their fault. The second is the exact order you should read a research paper in, and how to handle the jargon without losing your mind. The tools that completely transformed how I organize what I read and what I learned through reading research papers. And the tools are, well, Mendeley and Obsidian. And fifth is the mindset shift that took me from 3 weeks to lesser time. So this video is for students, for researchers, and like for just anyone who is interested in research, and like researching a lot of things. It is not like particularly just science research, it could be any research which are interested in, and they you know took a paper in hand and thought that what on earth am I reading. If you are one of that and it sounds familiar, this video is for you. So let's go. So part 1 is why are you probably reading research papers wrong, right? So let me paint you a picture of what exactly I used to do when I started my course and reading research papers. Okay, I would open a paper, I would start at the title, then the abstract, then word 1 of the introduction, the paragraph 2, then the paragraph 3, and well, by almost the last paragraph of the introduction, I would hit a term that I didn't know. Okay, yeah, it's all right. Okay, this is your first time, you're just stepping into the field and everything. So I would stop, open a new tab, read about the term, find 3 more terms that I didn't understand while reading the definition of that term, go deeper into the rabbit hole of, you know, jumping through a term and then the next term, come back 20 minutes later having completely forgotten what I was reading. Then I would reach the method section, okay, somehow, after days. And I feel like I was reading a recipe in a foreign language. Then I used to come to the results, which were full of figures I didn't know how to interpret. Then the discussion, which referenced almost 20 other papers that I hadn't read. And by the end, I would sit back and think, okay, I read it all. Like, I read it. So I understood it, like, right? Did I understand it? I actually had no idea. So here is what my senior told me that day, which completely reframed everything. She said, "You are reading a paper like it's a novel. It's not a novel, it's a scientific argument." Which you're losing, by the way. And you need to understand the argument before you understand the details. And she said something that I will never forget, that if you jump straight into the results and discussion, just like if you jump straight into a conclusion in real life, you will bias how, you know, you read the situation, you read the figures. You will look for what the authors want you to see instead of what is actually there. And that hit me, you know. She had a good way to explain things, because she was right. I had been reading results and discussions first because I wanted to know the answers before I had even understood the questions. And that is completely backwards, right? The paper is not there to tell you what to think, it is there to show you just the evidence of the study. And if you read the conclusions before you read the evidence, you will accept the conclusion without critically evaluating whether the evidence actually supports it. This is not science. This is just reading someone else's opinion, okay? Because when you read a lot of research papers, you understand that not every research is like a fact. It could be that the next research paper that comes in the same field on the same topic might touch onto something that will totally disregard the first one. So it's a skill. A research paper is not like a final destination for that study. So, first and foremost, the most important thing that I want to tell you is the order in which you read a paper, and it matters like greatly. And most people get it wrong. So, let me show you the right order. So, the part 2 is the right order to read a research paper. I call this the 3 pass method, and this is the single biggest game changer for me. Pass 1 is the skim. Do this always. First. Like, do this first. Always. Yeah, that is what I wanted to say. Before you read a single sentence properly, skim the entire paper. I mean, really skim it. This should take you not more than 5 to 10 minutes. And it shouldn't take you more than 5 to 10 minutes, because if you're like giving more time, you're doing it wrong. So here what you look at in the first pass. First comes the title. So what is the main claim? Like, what are the keywords they are using, and like how strong is their language and how strong is the question, okay? Then comes the abstract. You need to understand that what research gap did they target, what did they do, and what did they find, right? Because it sets a stage where they tell you about the past researches that have happened and what is already known, which they are building upon. And then comes the questions that they asked and find the answers to. Then comes the figures and their captions. Yes, you need not read the results or discussion section first. You need to see the figures and their legends. Just the figures. Read every caption. Well, do not try to interpret it yet. Just see what experiments were done, and like what are the cell lines they used, or what was the organisms they used, how big was the sample, what statistical tests they did, and yeah, just basically all the figures that are present in the paper. Then comes all the headings of results and discussions, like what are the sections, and like how are they structuring their argument. Okay, then comes the actual, like, result sections. Go through it while also looking back at the figures whenever they mention it, even if they have mentioned the figure 10 times in just 10 lines. You should go back to the figure to cross check every argument, every single sentence they tell you about. And I was a lazy reader. Okay, I was like, okay, I'm going to read all the 10 lines first, then I'll like see the figure because I already read it, right? But no, one thing, the bracket comes, figure this, you need to go back, because only that will save you time and you'll actually understand the paper in the right structure. Okay, after that you come to the conclusion, and you understand that what did the authors say they found, because sometimes while reading the results and discussions, the authors would not tell you that they are like diverting from the first questions they asked. They tell you the exact findings in the conclusion. They sometimes mention that the questions they asked wasn't really giving them a lot of information, so that could not give them a conclusive answer. So they asked more questions, and this is a different result that we found out. So, yeah, sometimes they do that in some of the research papers, and it comes with experience. You understand how clear the study is, which is done in the research paper, irrespective of the journal they are in. Because sometimes you think that if it's a big journal, the reviewers won't let them, like, you know, divert a little from the exact question, right? But it happens more than you expect. So, yeah, that's it. Um, you are like kind of mapping the territory, because now you're not, getting lost into everything. You are not drowning, you are kind of navigating. So, yeah. Then comes the past two, the contextual read. So, this time you read again in a specific order. Step one is the introduction. Read the introduction carefully. This is where the author tell you why their questions matter, okay? And what has been done before, as I said. And this is kind of your orientation. So do not skip it. Step 2 comes the review papers first. Okay. Don't kill me. Not the paper itself, but review papers while reading a bigger research article is very important, because when I was reading the introductions and abstract, I would come across terms which I said I used to Google it and everything. But if you read review papers based on the questions, or the based on the bigger concept that is the article is dealing, you would saving like almost 70% of the time you would have spent like googling each term. Review papers are meant to summarize the field, okay, to summarize the concept, and it would cover almost every keyword, every new term that is going to come into the actual your target research article in a shorter form. And in the right context, because a lot of times a keyword, a concept might mean different in a different context, but in your targeted study, the keywords meaning is very important. So you need to read the, like, just one or two research review articles before the research article. And this is the advice that saved me the most time, and I wish someone had told me earlier, because I was being so lazy that I didn't even think of this. So, if you're new to a topic, do not try to read the primary research paper first. Read a review paper on the topic first, and it will explain you the key concepts and define the jargon, which is gonna be a very big wall to climb onto, and they're kind of written to be understood. Okay, yeah, because well, I remember when I was struggling with this one HSP paper, which is the heat shock proteins, for anyone wondering. I was trying to understand a landmark primary research paper, okay, without understanding the basics of protein stress response. It was like trying to understand advanced maths proof without even knowing algebra. The moment I read two review papers on heat shock proteins first, the primary paper went from incomprehensible to actually quite readable. The jargon that had been stopping me on the like on almost every line suddenly made sense because now I had the vocabulary to work on. So here is my rule. If a paper has more than 5 terms you don't understand in the abstract, find the review paper first. The next step is to read the methods. I know a lot of people would disagree with me, okay, but listen to what I'm saying. Don't obsess over the method section. Read the methods to understand what they did and how they did it. But unless you're trying to replicate the experiment, you do not need to understand every technical detail. Ask yourself, does the experimental approach make sense for the questions they asked? That is usually enough. Because a lot of people tell me, you are in biology. There are like almost what 50 experiments that are being done repeatedly, and like there are not more than 50 general experiments that are done, like just a twist and a little bit changes that they do. But yeah, that's it. You should save your time before reading. You know, you should save time reading the research papers by not reading the methods, because that will not add on to anything. But sometimes they tell you what twist they did, like when I was writing my own paper, the biggest twist was in the methods. That is how we answered a very important question. So that is like my personal bias, that I always try to look in the method section, and I try to spot if there is something that the authors have changed in the method section. Okay, don't obsess over the methods. The next step is the results. Now you look at the figures, okay? Uh, do look at the figures very carefully. Cover the figure legends if you need to. Look at the figure itself. What does it show? What pattern do you see? Just see that first before you actually go into the details. And what would you conclude from this data? Is that a positive or an increasing pattern or a decreasing pattern? Just keep a note of it. Then read the legend. Then read what the authors say in the results section. This is critical. From your own interpretation of the figure before you read the author's interpretation, this is how you build critical and analytical skills, okay? This is how you spot when authors overinterpret their data, because again, they already have a bias. They have been doing this study for years, and they want the study to like to be a success, and that is how they try to draw a conclusion from a single sentence where they actually needed like 5 more to conclude it properly. So yeah, this happens a lot, okay, and you need to develop that skill to spot it. And after doing that, you go into the discussion. The discussion is where the authors interpret their findings in the context of the broader field. Read it very critically. Ask yourself, does this conclusion follow from the result, or again, are they overreaching? What alternative explanations exist that they are not discussing? A lot of times, while writing the research papers or during the review uh, of the research papers we're publishing, the reviewers tell them that whatever alternative explanations you are providing, you do not have the evidence for it, right? So you should not talk about it. Maybe other research group will cover it, and this, I think, is not a part where you should comment on anything, and it gets scraped off the paper. So a lot of times the alternative explanations are not present in the research article. It will You will only stumble upon it if you like pick up a different article. So this is where you need to take advantage of your own critical thinking and hunt for a paper that gives you an alternative explanation. Then comes the pass 3. This is the deep dive, okay? But it should be only done when necessary. Pass 3 is only for papers that are like very central for your work. This is where you go line by line, annotate heavily, look up every reference that matters. Every reference is usually around 150 to 200 other papers, other blogs, other articles that have been referenced in the paper, and really grapple with the paper. Most papers do not need pass 3, so you should save it for the ones that actually need it. Now comes the part 3, dealing with the jargon. Let's talk about jargon because I think this is where most people lose confidence and start to think maybe I'm not smart enough to understand this, because I've been through it. You're smart enough. The jargon is genuinely hard, okay? It is a barrier that takes time to build through. And I'm going to tell you how I handle it, okay? Rule 1 is do not look up every word. This is what I did. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but if you stop to look up unfamiliar terms, you will never build the reading momentum. You will spend like more time than that you are going giving to your research article on different papers, like the review papers that I told you. But you need to do it very smartly, okay. So instead you underline the terms you don't know and keep reading. Like if it's not a very important or something that you cannot go further without looking it up, you should look it up, but otherwise do not do it. Often the paper itself defines the term or a sentence a little later. So you would like there's a chance that they will explain it maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs later. So you sometimes wait for it. Again, it comes with experience. Often you can infer meaning without context. Sometimes. The rule 2 is use the highlight and come back system. I highlight jargon in Mendeley, which I'll talk about in a minute, and only look up the terms that appear more than twice or that are clearly central to understanding the argument. Everything else I let go. The rule 3 is build your vocabulary deliberately through review papers. Every field has its own language. You learn the language the same way you learn any language, through exposure and repetition. Reading review papers in your area builds vocabulary faster than any other method because they define terms explicitly and use them in the context repeatedly. Rule 4 is talk to someone. Talk to anyone, like talk to someone. Because when I was stuck on the HSP paper, one conversation with my senior explained everything to me in 10 minutes. Like, I was struggling with the paper for almost 3 weeks, right? And I did not had to do it alone, right? So do not underestimate the power of asking someone, a lab mate, a supervisor. Even posting a genuine question in a scientific community online is actually enough sometimes. Explaining what you don't understand out loud often reveals what you actually do understand. And the rule 5 is that accept that confusion is part of the process. I had to make peace with not understanding everything in a paper on the first read. It's hard. It takes a toll on your ego, but yeah, you need to make peace with it. Or the second paper that you read. So it's a process. Some papers took me 4 or 5 reads over several months before they fully clicked. Yes, I think a lot of people would agree with me on, like, or would have the same experience as me on this, because sometimes it's not just a week's matter. It's sometimes months that takes you to understand a paper properly. And that is completely okay. Understanding builds slowly and non linearly. So you need to break the notion that reading, understanding, or learning is a linear process. It's not. It's a very non linear, very, very intuitive kind of a process that you need to go through to actually build an understanding of research. And well, what confused you in 1 month will often make complete sense in the next month. So because you would have a more comprehensive list of research papers that you've already read in the field, and sometimes it clicks at the end of the month. So yeah, it's again completely all right. Then comes the part 4, the tools, Mendeley and Obsidian. Okay, so let's talk the tools, because having the right system for organizing what you read is just as important as how you read it. So I use 2 tools which I think I genuinely cannot imagine doing my research without them now. First comes the Mendeley. It's a free reference manager, and I think a lot of people might already use it for your research. So think of it as a library that lives on your computer and in the cloud. So here is what I use it for: storing papers. Every paper I read goes into Mendeley. I never lose a paper. You just need to enter the paper headline or the PDF, and you can actually arrange it by keywords, authors, or different tags instantly. And I never lose its citation, because you can actually create the citation in any format that you need it for. Second comes the annotating. I highlight and annotate directly in Mendeley. I color code my highlights, okay? So yellow is for key findings, green for methods that I want to remember, pink is for things that I disagree with or, find questionable, that I can maybe discuss with my seniors, with my professor, or sometimes mail the authors with the right questions. Blue is for terms I need to look up, and well, when I come back to a paper like 6 months later, I can see at glance what I thought was important. So you can note these colors if you don't have a system already with you. And yeah, it works wonders. Then comes the generating citations. Mendeley integrates with Word and exports citation in any format that I already told you. So when I was writing my paper, this alone saved me like hours and hours, because the people who didn't do that had to manually generate all the citations. Then well, comes my tip, is that tag every paper when you add it. Tags like, for my research was like ER stress, copper homeostasis, review, methodology. This makes it incredibly easy to find like relevant papers when you are writing, because after a week you won't really, you know, recall anything. You won't even recall if you read that paper or not. Yeah, it happens, okay? And while writing it, you are in different kind of stress. You just cannot give more time into organizing the stuff from scratch. Okay. So then comes Obsidian, and the second tool is Obsidian. So, Obsidian is where things get really powerful. It is a note taking app. It is not directly linked to like research, citation, or reference management, but it is a note taking app that works on the principle of linked notes. So, if you want to connect ideas of different papers and like see the relationship between them, the best advantage of Obsidian is it makes you like see the relationship visually. It has a graph feature where you can see the linked nodes, the internodes through which they are getting connected, and like how closely connected they are. So if like there are two papers on let's say oxidative stress and mitochondria, and one and the other paper that I just like read for fun would be like maybe some ecology related, or like or like a paper on plants, like how they can tolerate metals or something like that. Okay, so in this, the connection would be the oxidative stress, and the mitochondria would be like closely related, right? Because the papers that I have read might have the same concepts that I've linked, or same pages notes that I've linked, and there would be the ecology paper. So the mitochondria and oxidative stress paper would be somewhere here in the graph, and the ecology paper would be here with a very thin line of like a thin internode line, which might be like something there would be in that paper that is getting connected here, but not as much or not as frequently, or not, it's not as important. So yeah, that's how it is. Like, it's called a second brain, where you organize your ideas based on the patterns that you can see in the information. And I'm a fan of this app, and I just love noting the things that I learned through papers, and seeing it visually, because sometimes when you have that bird's eye view for different topics, you tend to see relationships, or some of the ideas pop into your head that wouldn't have like otherwise come to you, because that's not like a linear relationship, or like not an obvious relationship, but you just like, if you're smart enough, you can see some very different, and some like very you know okay, I got a little excited there, but yeah, it's a mind blowing tool, and I can also share some of my workflows, and like it has different vaults for different topics, and like different the analogy to it would be folders in your computer. So yeah, it has vaults, and it just, if you customize it enough, it actually is a is a neurological map of how you think and see patterns in your reading and your learning. So yeah, it's best. Okay, so in Obsidian I have like a simple template, because I've used Obsidian for almost 5-6 years. But to get the most out of it would be to use some kind of a template that you use for every note, so that linking it can be much more easier and much more efficient. My mom was watching a video on 200% volume. I had to stop her. Okay, where was I? Okay, so the note that I use has a simple template, and it is as follows. I use paper, title, and citation as the first point. The second comes the main question that the paper asks. Then I, jot down the key findings. They're mostly in my own like words, which, and this is a non-negotiable. Okay, like if you copy paste the findings from the paper, you it's of no use, because if you're going to come back to understand something, to like recall something, or you are referencing it for some other study, you won't get it. It was hard enough to read it for the first time and understand it, and just copy pasting it is like getting you nowhere. So this is a non-negotiable. You need to write it in your own words. It could be as short as like 3 lines, but it's a must. Then comes the new methods used. If I like find some new method that or a paper that is very important because of the methods used, this section is what I highlight the most in that note. Then comes my questions and critiques. Okay, so this is something which is your personal thing, okay, your second brain. So you can ask any questions. No question is a silly question, okay? And or the other critiques, like if you thought that the paper somewhere has a little like useless jargon, or it has overcomplicated things, or a method that could have explained the like findings better, or like or some paper that had much more uh, you know much more comprehensive, much more thought fully designed experimental plan, or just like any critic comment that you have, so you can mention in this point. And then the last part, what I do is that as I have these different keywords, so you can link it or backlink or forward link it to some other node. So I always like highlight the keywords that I think might also come into other papers, and then I link those keywords to the other papers. And again, this is a non-negotiable, because then it just, you could have done it in a Word document and not take any like conclusion, or not take any learning point from it. So this is the very important part where you need to link this. I'm thinking of making a video to explain it better, because I have seen when I was learning how to use Obsidian, people complicate it so much. It's such a simple tool. It's like such a simple language, or like the markup language. It's so simple, but people just tend to overcomplicate things to make them look more, or make them look like a pro or anything, I don't know. But yeah, in the productivity or the learning community, I haven't seen a video that simplify it or anything, or not based on like research paper findings and linking things. So maybe I'll make one. So yeah, uh, again, as in the last after every entry of your paper, you can go into the graph view and literally see the visual map of how all your nodes connect to each other. And like you can see after a year, just a year, or maybe even 6 months of reading reading research papers very consistently, you could see like clusters forming among topics, as I've mentioned earlier. And with the clusters, there comes gaps in the like in your visual graph, which becomes like very visible. And it just like, how can I say, I wasn't digging for a research gap, but when you see the clusters and some topics not getting very interconnect, like not very not having a lot of backlinks to other papers, it becomes isolated. And when you search papers for it and when you ask different questions on the topic, you cannot find papers or studies done on it. And that's how you actually identify a research gap. So, again, for identifying a research gap, there are more tools, and they have like a better library of papers and everything with different tags and categories. But that's something which is controlled by a lot of journals, and it has a lot of limitations because not everyone can afford their services and everything. But if you like want to learn about a research gap with your own experiences and with your own, like list of research papers that you've read, and want to identify the research gap between it, so this is the perfect way to approach it. So yeah, again, it will make you see the connections between papers that you would never notice otherwise. Writing my own paper was like, it became dramatically easy because my own paper on my own thesis, because I had already done this synthesis in Obsidian, and I wasn't starting from scratch. I was drawing from a knowledge network that I had built myself node by node. So it's very rewarding at the last when you can actually work with your own, like with your own system. And yeah. Okay, so the my tip would be that always write the key findings in your own words. No copy from the abstract again. And well, this is the most effective way to actually understand what you read. And if you cannot explain it in your own words again, you haven't understood it. Okay, so you need to go back and read it again. So it's kind of a self-assessment and exam which you can take on your own, because without these assessments, you'll never know what your range of understanding is for that particular paper. Okay, now comes the part 5, which is like the most important part too, because this is the mindset shift that I had, that made me like become a better, like, a reader of research. I don't know, like better researcher, if you can say, who like who is getting to like the act of reading research paper and not hate it as much. So yeah, the part 5, so mindset. Well, I want to end this with something that nobody talks about enough. Okay, so this is like the emotional side of reading research papers. I know I'm getting emo, but trust me, if you are in the research field, you already know it, because here is the truth. When I was sitting with that HSP paper for 3 weeks, I was not just confused, okay, I was embarrassed. I was convinced that everyone else in my program was reading papers with ease and understanding them like perfectly. I was the only one who was secretly like kind of drowning in the confusion uh, and the embarrassment. Well, I was not, and you are not either, because reading papers is genuinely hard. Like, it is supposed to be hard, because the scientists don't write it for students, they write it for their peers. People sign like, of course, scientists who work in the field, who are very, well versed with everything. So that is the level they always aim for. They never dumb it down, so that citizen scientists, as you call it, people who don't actually partake in research on daily basis but read papers to make products, to apply the knowledge or anything. And also, they don't care about the students, they don't dumb it down to take care of the students. And oftentimes journals have like word limit, or journals have their own, I could say, a theme, or um, like a minimum mark of how easy the paper is to read. Like, some journals want it to be hard to make it different from other journals. So, like, it's just like fashion magazines, where some magazines go for very like very unconventional high fashion things that not everyone can relate to, whereas other fashion magazines have like collections that cater to people that are gonna wear it every day, and like some tips and hacks for them, so you get the difference, right? So the scientists who write them have spent their entire careers becoming fluent in that language, which you are just beginning to learn. So you need to keep that in mind. And of course, it feels hard. Again, it is supposed to feel hard. What I want you to take from my 2 years of struggling, not too many more years of struggling, is this: that confusion is not failure, confusion is the beginning of understanding. Every paper that confused me eventually taught me something, not just about like the science, about how science is done, about how arguments are constructed, and about how evidence is presented, and conclusions can be like stretched or sometimes even undertold. So the goal is not to understand every paper perfectly on the first read. The goal is to get a little better each time, to build the vocabulary word by word, and to build the intuition by reading it more and more. So yeah, and I promise you will, if if you get something from my approach, or while listening to this you come with an idea which might work better for you. So I promise you are going to get better at reading research papers, and it's not going to be as horrible as it is now. It always gets better. So to summarize, here is what I talked with you, and what you can take away from today is that: read in the right order, skim first always, read reviews before primary papers if you are new to a topic, and look at figures before you read what the authors say about them. Then comes: do not fight jargon word by word, build vocabulary through review papers first, and let the context do the work. Use Mendeley to store, annotate, and cite. Use Obsidian to connect ideas and build a knowledge network that compounds over time. Be patient with yourself. Like, all of my research degree felt like a long time when I was in it. Looking back, it was exactly how long it was supposed to be. All the struggle and how I learned, the pace and the time, everything was actually perfect. So if this video saved you even a moment of confusion, please share it with one person who knows you know is struggling with a paper right now, because I wished someone sent me something like this. So they exist in every lab, okay? I was like, a person like me is in every lab, every program, every university, quietly feeling like very alone in this struggle. And yeah, if you want more videos on how to actually do science, not just the glamorous published version, but the messy learning process, let me know. I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.